Alright, if you see this when it comes out, I'll be camping. So while I should be back later in the day, if I don't get to your comments at all for this video until tomorrow, sorry, but that will be why. And there are some people who seriously take issue with the buy or not buy videos. And I do actually really get it. They feel like these are kind of replacing the retrospectives, which are way better for sure, and I really feel where they're coming from with that. But the hilarious thing is that what I most meant these to be an addendum to is the PerspectiveEnd recommends videos, rather than the retrospectives. So to that end, I'm going to try and separate these a bit better, pay more attention to the value of the figures than give a concise review of them and put them into the context of the lines. I'll still do that, but I want this to be more of a buyer's guide to the line, rather than a look back on it. To that end, I'm now going to add a new rating of recommended. So figures that are a buy means that I think that there's a reasonable chance that you'll like it, but based on your tastes, it could disappoint you. Whereas a recommended figure is one that I think that everyone will love. And this time I'm going to cover both Waves 3 and 4 of Legacy Evolution, because this is where Hasbro's distribution became some of the worst I've ever seen. So like half of these final two waves I was just never able to find. And while I can evaluate a lot of this stuff because it's repaints and retools, there are things that I just don't have the figure to be sure about. Welcome to Buy or Not Buy, Legacy Waves 3 and 4. Alright, starting with the cores of Wave 3, Dinobot Scar is an immediate not buy. The absolute least interesting of the core class by a country mile. A complete non-character with a boring design and some of the worst articulation that any of these have had. There's just nothing for anyone to want here unless you're willing to shell out the money for the other 5. Then there's the repack of Starscream. If you didn't get it before, then it's exactly as good as it ever was. After that, Dinobot Swoop. And not only is Dinobot Swoop an immediate buy, Swoop is recommended. Weirdly, this is the one Dinobot in the set that kind of feels stylized, and may in fact be a female version of the character. But unlike the rest of the core Dinobots, Swoop comes across like you're buying an actual core, and not just a single piece of the combiner. This is a full-fledged figure on its own, with all the traits that you should expect. And just a damn good pocket toy for a cheap price. I can't see you regretting the money spent. Now the Wave 3 Deluxes. Axle Grease. A figure I've never managed to find. The scrapbook it was retooled out of was good, and the aesthetic is cool, so if you're into the Iser figures, then this is a buy. And while maybe there's a chance that the elbows are better on this version, I don't think this brings the value to make you enjoy the figure if you don't enjoy the concept. Beachcomber is don't buy. This is literally just a worse version of the Power of the Primes Legends figure. Every aspect is just not as good, save for the size. It sacrificed so much for accuracy, and it drained all of the fun out of the figure to do it. And it didn't really add anything. Plus, the Paradise Parakeet is inhalable and losable, and I can't believe that accessory was considered important enough to be a co-headliner for the box. Autobot DevCon. Could not find. I don't know how many stores I went to during Wave 3 and 4 to try and get all the figures, but they just could not be located, because Hasbro is terrible at selling us their products. It's a pretty heavy 86 Blur retool, which itself was a reasonably heavy Titans Return Blur retool, and that's good news because that's a great figure. While I think that the 86 version is actually the less good rendition of the character, maybe they fixed the problems with it, so who knows. I'd say that the chances of this being at the very least solid are pretty high. Predacon Tarantulas is recommended, but it's a repack of an amazing figure that I feel like they've already repacked like twice before. I've yet to meet the person who said that they regretted picking this up, save for the rare individual who's afraid of the bug mode because it's too real. Alright, the Voyagers. Earthrise Dirge. Avoid. At this point, my contempt for the Earthrise mold is legendary, and this has to be like the 4th time they've tried to push this version onto us. But as bad as the mold has always been for the Seekers, it's even worse for the Cone Heads, where it forces the characters' heads to faux form when the silliest aspect of their design that makes them distinct needs the justification that their heads are the nose cones of the planes. Outside of that, this just doesn't work for all the reasons that the mold has never worked. The accuracy is through the floor, despite what people really want to pretend, as the proportions are off, the body is misshapen, the backpack is incorrect, and most confusingly of all, the feet are incorrect, which I just don't understand why. Like, I hate complaining about this because it makes me sound like Quentin Tarantino, but Starscream has the most famous feet in all the Transformers, and they were like, nah, just give him normal Transformers feet. It's dumb, it's ugly, it's unfun, it ruins the point of the cone heads. I hate this thing, I hate it so much, and when its direct predecessor was the Siege, this is a crime that should never have happened and should not have been allowed to continue on this long. Then there's Nemesis Leo Prime. Leo Prime in way worse colors. A black repaint has never looked so bad, and that's partially because this isn't really a black repaint so much as it is a dark gray repaint. Don't buy. The colors are so boring here, and they make a figure who is already suffering in some of the aesthetic aspects even worse. The saving grace was always the transformation, but this is a figure that only ever barely crossed over the line before, that now has even less going for it. And I think you all agree, because this thing shelf-warmed to hell, and I know I passed it up every time I saw it. Now for Leader Prime Universe Dreadwing. It's Skyquake in blue, literally all it is. So that's a buy. Good in green, good in blue. I didn't pick it up because I didn't need the exact same thing in blue, and you might find that you don't either. So maybe you skip this if you already have it in green. But if not, blue is a good color, and the yellow face is better, stands out more. Back up to the top, Core Class Optimus Prime. How many times are they going to re-release this thing? Honestly, don't buy at this point. Teach them a lesson that they can't sell this thing until time ends. Then there's Dinobot Snarl. Could not locate. I was looking for it forever. I just had no luck in getting it, which is a bummer because it looks like that one, much like Swoop, might be one of the only members of this team worth a damn on their own. That legitimately just looks solid, and it would let me finish off my not quite Volcanicus. Then Deluxe Bombshell. Avoid. The Legacy Insecticons were at their best with their first member, Kickback, who was a 7 out of 10, and it was just downhill from there. I mean, at least Shrapnel got his own mold, but this thing just isn't trying to earn your money. It's taking bad parts from an older figure and then slapping them onto new parts with the now worst head in the franchise, where it is a horrible fusion of a tiny being that looks malformed transformed, and a neck hat, all because actually trying would just be too hard. Detritus I saw once in stores and passed it up. I just wasn't feeling like I needed a more boring version of Siege Hound, which was one of my favorite figures ever. I mean, this is probably a buy because Siege Hound was awesome, so it's at least worth the money, but that in tan just has so much less personality and it didn't motivate me. Cyberverse Universe Shadow Striker is just not Cyberverse Universe Shadow Striker. That character is famously a Frankenstein's monster, and this is just the normal version of her. And look, we all know the reason why. This is a bad pre-tool of RID 2001. Cyburn. A figure that I'm noticing shelf warm really hard right now, and that makes sense because this thing sucks. Avoid it. There's nothing cheap about this outside of it clearly existing to make another character that hilariously no one cares about, so they sacrifice the actual popular character on the altar of Cyburn. Disgusting. But that's kind of the problem, isn't it? The RID 2001 figures all kind of sucked super hard, thanks to them being basically giant shelf warmers with huge quantities of kibble. You can't really fix that while still trying to recapture that aesthetic in the modern era because the robot modes were too spindly to form the vehicle modes. So you wind up with a gigantic shield, an obnoxious backpack, and a bad aesthetic, all to capture something that was a bad idea 20 years ago. They didn't phone it in, they really tried. They just shouldn't have made a Cyburn. Robots in Disguise 2015 Universe Strong Arm. And I thought Shadow Striker had an overly complicated name. Well, if it isn't the somehow worse RID. How are both the Robot in Disguise shows bad comedies? This is a retool of Legacy Elita, who wasn't worth the money. And this is Strong Arm, one of the most insufferable, selfish, two-faced hypocrites in all the Transformers. An Autobot so repugnant, I'm amazed that she isn't supposed to be a con. Like her rules for thee, but not for me personality really seems like a villain's character. Anyways, I didn't pick this up, why would I? Elita was already a weak as hell figure, and this is that, but as a much worse character who whenever I think about, I get in a bad mood. Like, it's a better mold than Shadow Striker, but I actually like her. So I was willing to grab that figure. This would have an uphill battle if the figure was amazing, but it's not even okay. It's just better than one of the least fun figures in years. Leader Class Comic Universe Bludgeon. Didn't pick it up. I hate that Tarn mold. I don't even get why this is so contentious. I literally just think it's because Tarn has an extremely cool design on his own, but outside of having that look, there's nothing special about the figure. It's got slightly better than average posing that's ruined by the shoulders, with a nothing transformation and a nothing alt mode. That, yes, is accurate, but it still doesn't look all that interesting. And this is just that in way more fun Halloween colors. Honestly, as much as I love Tarn's design, I can't help but feel like all the repaints of this mold wound up looking way better. Look, I know that I'm the odd man out here, so while I don't get why anyone else likes these, I can say that you will probably be happy getting this, because I guess I must be the insane one here. But I'm still going to say don't buy, though I know you probably already have and are probably happy. Trashmaster is a figure that I'm just barely going to say is a buy. It's working to earn your money, but it has a lot of foibles, and it's only just kind of this side of fun. It never really elevates itself beyond alright. The gimmicks don't really pay off enough to be worth the sacrifices made for them, even when with a lot of work they can turn out really fun. But that's kind of the problem with the whole faction, isn't it? I can buy a really fun Transformer on its own, just normally, or I can buy one of these who can be really fun if you put in the work to try and have fun with them. I do think that this succeeds, but I get why many people will gladly pass this by. Lastly, for Legacy Evolution, there is Haslab Deathsaurus, and I kind of really don't know how to rate this. Like, the people who got it basically got what they wanted, and it is very good. A chug masterpiece hybrid. So I don't think that there are many regretful buyers of this, outside of me, and even I'm not miserable because of this buy, but I do keep it in the closet in its box, in the protective outer box it came shipped in with all the accessories, and have plans to sell it eventually. One day, when I finally stop being lazy about it and get to it. By complete random happenstance, I sold it while recording this audio. Literally unrelated. It just happened this way. This thing, it's good. I just don't care about the character at all. I really like the IDW version of this dude, but I just have no passion for the Master Force one. So it's a buy that you really can't buy anymore, unless you pretty much get it from me, which you suddenly can't do amazingly. That does really do everything that it set out to do, but what it does is so specific that even recognizing that it is quite good, I can't give it a comfortable blanket, you should get one. Because I am proof that it won't really work out if you aren't convinced that you want this from the onset. It's great, but not for me. And Legacy Wave 3 and 4 are basically good, but weirdly impossible to get a hold of. It has been a long time since I came away from a Transformers line with it being so incomplete in my collection. And while that's predominantly because distribution was just so bad this time that I couldn't find a lot of what I was looking for, it was also due to the fact that there were both a lot of repacks of old figures that I already have, or repaints and retools of figures that I flat out refused to get. Of 18 figures between these two waves, only 5 of them are completely new. The rest are either repaints, redecos, or like 50% of the figure came from somewhere else. And that leaves these two waves feeling really stale. 13 of these figures did not feel new at the time as they were coming out, and even if more of them were fun than not, it does mean that the line ends in a very yawn-inducing state. So little of what was here was super exciting. And I suppose we'll have to find out what happens when you combine the front and back halves of Legacy Evolution when I do my retrospective on it. But before we go, let's thank a channel backer. If you'd like to get on the wheel yourself or get access to the private Discord, you can become a patron or a channel member. And this time it's... That got so close to Heavenly Dirt Foul. But congratulations to Ordo with Transformers RID 2001 Fire Convoy. Weirdly topical. The one good figure out of Robots in Disguise 2001. It's hugely a parts former, this is true, but the figure was awesome. Loaded with gimmicks and quality, it posed better than most figures from the era, had that shiny chrome that you know I loved, it had the super mode and the interesting design and the quality and the hardware. And while the parts forming was a bit of a faff, it was so much better than the rest of the Rid figures, where digging out all of the parts from their kibble shells was a finger-bleeding endeavor. A clear best of show from 20 years ago. Still love this figure all this time later. And that's not half of it to say, but it's enough of it to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.